Tennessee Life is sponsored by Next to New, an upscale consignment shop serving Knoxville. nexttonewknox.com. And by The Flower Pot, for over 100 years, offering flowers and same-day delivery with 2 convenient Knoxville locations. knoxvilleflowerpot.com. And by viewers like you. Thank you. Coming up on Tennessee Life, his skills on the guitar strings have made Tommy Emmanuel an international star, but his music has Tennessee roots.
I heard Chet on the radio, and I had one of those moments. I knew that that's the sound that I wanted to make. Whatever that was, that's what I had to do.
These turkeys have been grazing in the open air, fattening up in time for Thanksgiving dinner. We tour this small Morgan County farm where natural, healthy food is the focus. Take 2 big hearts and add a heaping serving of helping hands, and you've got the recipe for how the Love Kitchen feeds thousands of people each week.
I say one day we're going to have a place where people can come and eat and they don't even have to pay for it.
Those stories next on Tennessee Life.
Thanks for joining us for this edition of Tennessee Life. I'm Vicki Lawson. Legendary guitar player Tommy Emmanuel may be Australian born, but our state has influenced his music. So much so, he now calls Nashville home. We caught up with Tommy Emmanuel at the Tennessee Theater in Knoxville before he took to the stage. He talked to us about his Tennessee hero, Chet Atkins, and how he made a career as a musician without ever actually reading a note. Tommy, when you decided to move to Tennessee, what was your thought process in doing that?
I can still remember, it must have been 2003, I can still remember that feeling when I flew in from England, and when I touched down in Nashville, I got that feeling like I'm home. I got excited, and it was the first time I'd had that feeling since I was a teenager, really. When I would fly back into Sydney, I got that same feeling, and I thought, I really feel I'm home, you know, even though I don't sound like a Tennessean. And wherever I go, people say, you know, where are you from? You know, you hear that accent. And when I used to call Chet Atkins on the phone and just love that accent, you know, and he'd say, hey, Tommy, where are you? You know, and it was that strong East Tennessee accent. Where are you? You know? And he taught me how to say whoop. Yeah, he's going to get his whooping. He taught me all that stuff. And he taught me the delights of cornbread and grits and biscuits and gravy and all that stuff. Oh, yeah. A lot of good things about Tennessee, ladies and gentlemen, that'll expand you down here. Of course, I originally came to Tennessee to meet my hero, my mentor, my teacher, my idol, Chet Atkins, who was from this area. He was born in Luttrell, which is, 45 minutes from where we're sitting right now. And so it was, I've always had that connection ever since I found out about Chet's story and his life and all that kind of stuff. And the fact that he got started really in the business right here in Knoxville on a radio show called the Midday Merry-Go-Round.
Midday Merry-Go-Round. My mother grew up in that era.
Really?
And yes, and Chet Atkins, I have got the privilege to meet him one time. Can you share a great story about Chet Atkins with us?
Oh, I could tell you a million great stories about the Chief. He was such a fantastic person. The story of how I got on the Grand Ole Opry is a funny story, because Chet and I were recording at that time, and he said, let's have tonight off, you know, because we were working 7 days a week to get our album finished. And it was Saturday, and he said to me, have you ever been to the Opry? And I said, no, I haven't. And he said, well, we're going to go tonight. We're going to pay a visit. So we went down to Cracker Barrel, had some dinner, and then we went straight into the stage door entrance of the Opry. And of course, everybody backstage, as soon as they saw him, it was like the parting of the Red Sea, you know. We went straight through, and we went up to the side of the stage, and the producer come running over, you know, and he said, oh, Chet, good to see you and everything. And Chet just said, this is my friend Tommy, and he's from Australia, and he's a wonderful player. You should have him on the show. And the guy looked at me and said, next Saturday? And that's how I got on the Opry, just like that.
You recorded an album with Chet Atkins.
It was for the song he wrote called Smoky Mountain Lullaby.
Tell me about that experience.
Well, when I got the call from Chet about recording, first of all, I just about fell to the floor, and we started writing songs together and talking on the phone nearly every day, and it was amazing to realize that my hero had nothing else that he wanted to do but just make another album, and he'd been ill with cancer and everything, and I guess he thought, I've still got another good one in me, and so we started working on these songs and making tapes together, and then I eventually said, well, look, I'll have to come over so we can work together, and he said, come and stay at my house, and so there I was in this house, living in a little granny flat at the side.
Well, he honored you with certified guitar player.
Yeah.
And you were one of only 4, I think, that have ever received it.
There are 3 of us left now. Paul Yandel was the last one, and he died year before last. So there's just myself, Steve Warriner, and John Knowles.
Tell me about your first experience playing guitar. You were very young, weren't you?
I started playing guitar at the age of 4, and my mother gave me my first guitar, and she was the one who showed me how to play chords and how to be a accompanist. That was my first job, was to accompany my mother. She played lap steel guitar in a kind of Hawaiian style, and she needed somebody to go, and that's how I started playing the guitar, as a rhythm player for my mother. And then a little bit later, listening to the radio, I heard Chet on the radio, and I had one of those moments where I didn't know what he was doing. I was too young to understand it, but I knew that that's the sound that I wanted to make. Whatever that was, that's what I had to do.
Now, you played in some family bands. Tell me about that experience.
Well, I'm one of 6 children. We all wanted to play music. I was the youngest as far as the musician side. There were 2 younger than me, but they weren't into music. All 4 of the others were into music. So we were a family band. And my father hosted the show and kind of told a few jokes and introduced us and everything. And we became a unit. We became the Emmanuel family. Emmanuel Quartet, and we got on TV and on radio and stuff like that. And I used to do radio things where they would let me read the weather and stuff like that, because I had a personality and I loved to have fun, and I wasn't afraid.
You don't read music, I understand.
No,
and how has that...
See, she let the cat out of the bag. They're on to me.
They're on to you.
I don't read music. I play everything by ear. And it's a never-ending fascination, this instrument, this little box with wires. It's such a challenge. And, and I think what I learned from listening to players like Chet Atkins, Mel Travis, Jerry Reed, Django Reinhardt, George Benson, and people like that, is learning songs is the way to go. I learned interesting songs, interesting arrangements, and that's what taught me.
Before you were a headliner, you played in bands and you backed up some artists.
Yeah.
Share some of the artists that you backed up.
Well, I made a living all through the 70s and 80s playing on people's records, and that included records from overseas, people like Air Supply, and I even played on AC/DC stuff when I was young, though my name's not on there. But there was also some Roberta Flack records and Diana Ross and people like that. And after Michael Jackson died, I got to play on the album of his that came out after his death. And that was a great privilege for me. I've been a Michael Jackson fan since I was 12 years old,
At what point did you say, okay, I'm going to be a solo performer and this is going to be my career?
It was in the 80s. Yeah, I was playing in bands and I was doing commercials and stuff like that. But every now and again, when we'd take a break from touring, I would book myself in clubs as a solo act under my own name. And I started to draw a crowd, and I started to get a show together as an instrumentalist, I sing a few songs in the show now, but in those days I didn't. I just played instrumental music. And so it had to, you had to come out with everything blazing, when you're playing in pubs and bars where people are noisy and they're drinking and all that sort of stuff. You got to really hit people over the head with everything you got. And so that was my training ground. And all the nights where I went home almost in tears, frustrated with it, nobody was listening to me. All the time I was keeping my dream and my goal in sight, and that was to be playing the Tennessee Theatre and theatres like this. That was my goal.
You perform in Europe, you perform in the United States. What do you see as the differences, and how do they affect your performance?
Well, it's a very different market. My audience in Europe is much younger than here in America. I have an older demographic here in the United States. In Europe and in places like China, Japan, all that, it's mostly young people between the ages of 14 and 30. Here, it's between 30 and 90. I mean, I've been coming here to America since 1980. That's how long I've been working on this country, this market, and building an audience here, right? And I still haven't been on any of the major television shows like Letterman, Leno, Ellen, any of those kind of shows. I still can't get on those shows, right? I go to a place like Moscow and I'm on every television show there is, every major TV show. People in a country like Russia perceive me as an international star. In America, I'm perceived as a grey-haired guy who plays the guitar. That's the difference.
Is there anyone that you have not had the opportunity to play with that you would love to do?
Well, I've always had a dream. I have a great song that I think would be great for Brad Paisley and Keith Urban and I to play together as a guitar trio. So that's one of my missions is to make that happen. And I've been talking with Jerry Douglas, the dobro player with Alison Krauss and Union Station. And Jerry and I want to put a project together as well. So that's two kind of local Tennessee people that I want to work with.
Well, thank you so much for
Thank
not
you.
only sharing your love of music and your performance schedule, and it's busy at that, but also to know that you are now living in Tennessee, and we're so glad that you're here.
Thank you.
And sharing your Tennessee life while you're here in
Exactly.
Tennessee.
Well, thanks for having me. And I'd like to thank my mother for having me.
Thank you.
Later on Tennessee Life, step inside the Love Kitchen, where these twin sisters have been dishing out meals and much more for nearly 3 decades. And next, Tennessee turkeys from a farm committed to feeding people the natural way.
With Thanksgiving in mind, we traveled to Morgan County, Tennessee, to West Wind Farms where the turkeys and other animals roam. The owners of this small farm believe providing healthy turkeys, along with beef, pork, and chicken, will give you a healthier meal, and it all started in an effort to provide food for themselves.
We got the name West Wind Farms just from the nature of this farm. The wind is constantly blowing here. It's breezy year-round. It's very nice in the summer, but the wind constantly blows from the west, and that was a predominant characteristic, and so we decided to apply it to this farm. My name is Kimberly Cole. Myself and Ralph Cole are the founders of West Wind Farms. We've been farming since 1996. We grew up in Knoxville and Nashville, and we worked in Oak Ridge for a number of decades as environmental scientists. While we were in Oak Ridge, we kind of got an interest in producing more of what we consumed. We thought that farming would be an interesting occupation. So we moved to West Wind Farms and started farming in 1996, and our business has grown ever since. We did develop a strong environmental knowledge, and we went to work every day. We came home, and we thought, well, we're working a lot for money to produce the things that we buy every day, but we could actually produce many of these things ourselves and have less impact on our environment And so we brought that environmental knowledge that we had to apply to producing more of our own food. As we continued to produce that food, more people became interested in what we were doing, and really the business grew from that initial just wanting to produce for ourselves. Interestingly, we were vegetarian before we actually moved here, and what the land needed more than anything was to have continuous grazing on it. We started initially farming with chickens, but then we also started producing sheep and then cattle and then pigs, and so we had all of our own meat. We've grown into being one of the largest meat and poultry operations in the state, selling directly to the public. And now today we offer grass-fed beef, Berkshire pork, chicken, turkey, a little bit of lamb. We figured if we mastered chickens, we could master turkeys as well.
These are broad-breasted white turkeys, which are the standard meat turkey in the United States. There are some other varieties around, but these are the type that most people want for Thanksgiving, with the broad breast, with a lot of breast meat, that they provide a good, nice looking turkey on the table for Thanksgiving. As you can tell, these turkeys are outdoors. Almost all the turkeys in the United States are grown in large barns. They never get outdoors. So these turkeys have access to the pasture. Their diet is much more varied than a normal turkey. Most of our customers comment on the flavor difference between our turkeys and regular store turkeys, and I think that the flavor comes from the grass and the clover that they're eating every day. It takes about 14 to 16 weeks to grow out turkeys for the Thanksgiving market. These turkeys came in the mail in August as little babies. They'd just been hatched, and they go into a brooder where they can stay warm until they grow enough feathers. After about 3 weeks, they can come out to pasture. They can stay warm outdoors. So at that point, when they're 3 weeks old, we move them outside into these pens right here. The pens keep them safe from predators while they're growing up to size. They have their food and water inside there, and also there's no floor, as you can see, so they have access to the green grass that's underneath them. To me, the most challenging part of raising turkeys is when they're babies. Every type of animal has stages of growth. Some animals have strengths and other animals have weaknesses. When turkeys are small, they just like to think up ways to die. So through the years, we've lost a lot of baby turkeys. I think we have it down pretty well right now. This year was particularly good. This batch has survived and grown out pretty well despite all the frailties that turkeys have. The joke, of course, is that turkeys will look up into the air when it's raining and they'll drown that way, but they're not that dumb. They do have some smarts. For instance, when it's raining outside, they don't look up in the air, but they will go up underneath their shelters, even in the middle of the night. So that's, once they get to be this age, they're pretty well bulletproof.
We sell hundreds and hundreds every year. It's amazing. Of course, we offer turkey year-round, but the Thanksgiving turkey is the fresh, processed just a day before Thanksgiving, delivery turkey, and people love them. Since we started turkeys 17 years ago, the demand has increased every year. A lot of that is just people's awareness of our turkeys and how good they are, but also a large part of that is the growing local food movement, where more people are just aware of the health benefits and, I guess, community support that small farms and local food systems provide. Consumers can feel especially good about doing business with West Wind Farms because we practice more environmental practices than what many farms do. We have a solar array that actually generates enough power to power 4 residential homes every year. We generate almost as much power as we use. We also use solely rainwater collection. It goes through a small treatment facility that we have here on farm. We deliver thousands of miles every week, actually. To do that, we use compressed natural gas vehicles. Many of the problems that larger operations, confinement operations in particular, have with livestock parasites or disease are minimized by the type of paradigm that we are using here. We rotationally graze our animals around on pasture, and so that they're constantly moved away from worm populations or parasites. And they have access to fresh air. They're not confined to ammonia concentrated buildings, and so they don't have some of the issues that different farms that work in confinement buildings have. When I was young, I would have never envisioned being a farmer. In fact, nobody I know would have ever, in high school, would have ever voted me most likely to farm. Make farming a profession was a complete turnaround for us.
Just when you would expect people to slow down, twin sisters Helen Ashe and Ellen Turner pushed forward to turn a dream into a lifeline for many Tennesseans. In 1986, they started out feeding a couple of dozen people at a Knoxville church. Today, the Love Kitchen provides more than 3,000 meals each week. Now, even though the twins are 86 years old, you will still find them at the Love Kitchen overseeing their mission of food, family, and a big serving of love.
There's one Father, that's the Heavenly Father. There is but one race, and that's the human race. And Daddy taught us not to take the last piece of bread from the table because a person may come by that needs it, okay? And those are the three truths that our Dad taught us, wasn't it, Ellen? Right. Lord, and it's some things that happen in our lives are unbelievable, but look where we are now, honey. We're so blessed to be able to help people. We graduated from South Carolina, and upon our graduation, we had some aunts that lived here in Knoxville, Tennessee, and this was a gift for our graduation to have a trip here to Knoxville. And we came here, and here we are still here, aren't we, Ellen?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, we love it, honey. The parents that we had were wonderful parents, and they were just hard for you. Full of heart, want to Ellen. And so Mom and Daddy would talk to us about how great it was that we had this feeling that we were going to help people. We both were nurses at UT Hospital, and the people would come out there and be at the clinic all day, sometimes didn't have anything to eat. I said, Ellen, one day I'm going to do something about it.
Yes, you did.
Didn't I, Ellen?
Yes.
It's always in a dream, honey, because I say, Ellen,
Yes,
I say, one day we're going to have a place where people can come and eat, and they don't even have to pay for it. And she said, Helen, you talk about that all the time. I said, Ellen, you know it's not right to see people out in the street hungry.
They started the Love Kitchen on February 14th, 1986. That's when they served their first meal. Valentine's Day. It was 22 people. They served it in a little church on Chestnut Street over here, just about a block from where we are now. I said 22 people that first day. It's grown to 3,000 meals now every week. What we do is we give each recipient a stack of 7 meals. There's 3 different menus in that meal. So you have 2 of one menu, 2 of another, and then 3 of one. And that way they can have something different every day. They can have a good square meal. It'll have a meat, a vegetable, a starch, a piece of dessert. Now, if they have enough room in the refrigerator, we'll send them 14, so they can have 2 meals a day. And if they have even more room, we'll send 21. Most of our recipients just take 7. There are a lot of elderly people who can't get up, make meals for themselves, so we'll send them that, and they'll have just one kind of big meal a day, and they'll kind of snack on something the rest of the day. The sisters are just the heart and soul of this place. Everything you see around us is Helen and Ellen. All the love you see that everyone has here, it's more like almost like a family. That's from Helen and Ellen, the example they've set for everyone else here.
And the people here make you feel like working even harder because they come from their heart, and they work their hearts out. And the companies that have their employees to come here and work, we don't have to pay them anything. Now, you know that's a big plus.
Yes, it is.
That's a big plus, honey, and we love it, don't we, darling? Yes.
We all work in restaurants and work around food and know how food it goes right to your soul, and it makes people's day. And so I just think it's a wonderful organization, a way to give back, and that's why we are here and love it.
I was hungry plenty of times, and going without food sometimes harder than going without a place to stay and a place to live. I've been on my own since I was 15, first in Columbus, Ohio, And there, you know, I've needed help, and I lived on the streets and everything else, and just growing up and everything else, it's nice to have somebody willing to help you, because there's a lot of people out there that needs it. And if everybody would chip in and help out, there'd be less of that. But I mean, it's just, that's what it's from. It's from being in that situation. It's from being where a lot of these people are and everything else, and being able to contribute and help them. It makes me feel really good.
You see this love kitchen now? It makes you feel good, honey. I'm gonna tell you something. And I want to tell you this too. The little homebound people that we deliver meals to our homebound people. And let me tell you some of the prayers that some of them, oh my goodness, say to us, and keeps us going, honey. It's a blessing in it, Ellen. It's in my heart. I'm gonna do it one day. And we did it one day, didn't we, Ellen? We did. And it continues to grow, honey.
Something else Helen and Ellen like to say, everybody is God's somebody. Words these sisters certainly have taken to heart. We hope you have enjoyed this edition of Tennessee Life, from the Love Kitchen and Tennessee turkeys to legendary guitar player Tommy Emmanuel. I'm Vicki Lawson. See you next time.
Tennessee Life is sponsored by Next to New, an upscale consignment shop serving Knoxville, nexttonewknox.com, and by The Flower Pot, for over 100 years, offering flowers and same-day delivery with 2 convenient Knoxville locations, knoxvilleflowerpot.com.